It was almost tossed away, a dull, brown coin sitting at the bottom of an old coffee can in a dusty attic. But when a sharp-eyed collector picked it up, cleaned away the years of neglect, and realized what he was holding, that coin sold for nearly $1.8 million. And here's the shocking part, it was just an ordinary-looking 1942 Lincoln Wheat penny with no mint mark. No gold, no silver, just a simple copper coin, or so everyone thought. The year was 1942, America deep in the throes of World War II. Factories roared, the U.S. Mint was working around the clock, and copper, the very metal used for pennies, was suddenly a critical war resource. Bullets, shell casings, and electrical wiring needed it more than pocket change did. So the mint began experimenting with alternative metals, even planning the famous 1943 steel cent. But in the chaos of that transition, strange things happened, accidents that would go unnoticed for decades. One of those accidents produced a small number of 1942 Lincoln Wheat pennies with characteristics so rare, so baffling, that collectors today are willing to pay a fortune to own one. The coin we're talking about is more than just a piece of copper. It's a time capsule, a survivor from an era when every resource was stretched thin, every moment mattered, and even the smallest mistake could create history. The story of one particular coin still echoes in numismatic circles. A man in rural Pennsylvania was sorting through a jar of change his grandfather had saved. Most of it was common worn nickels, faded dimes, a few wheat pennies from the 50s. But then, there it was, a 1942 penny, darker than the rest, with an oddly sharp strike and no tiny letter beneath the date. No D for Denver, no S for San Francisco. Just the date, and silence. He almost overlooked it. But something about the shine, the way the light danced across Lincoln's cheek, made him set it aside. Days later, after a deep dive into old coin catalogs and auction records, his heart raced. He realized he might be holding a ghost, a coin so scarce it had appeared at public auction only a handful of times in living memory. When he finally had it authenticated, the grader's eyes widened. It wasn't just genuine, it was pristine. Mint state perfection, but what happened next stunned the entire coin world. That humble attic find sold at auction for nearly $1.8 million. Bidders fought over it like a rare diamond. And the whispers began. How many more of these are still out there? You see, most 1942 pennies were struck in Philadelphia without a mint mark, and tens of millions were made. But this wasn't just any no mint mark penny. The weight, the composition, the die alignment all hinted at something extraordinary. A possible transitional error. Some experts believe certain 1942 cents were accidentally struck on experimental planchets meant for 1943, a rare crossover in U.S. coinage that's almost impossible to detect without trained eyes and precise measurement tools. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were rushing to their storage boxes, searching for a match. Imagine a coin you've had in your family for decades, suddenly revealed to be worth more than your house. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle, and here's where the real suspense begins. Most people who own one of these coins don't even know it. They sit forgotten in jars, wedged in dresser drawers, or hiding in childhood collections. They don't scream treasure. They whisper it, quietly, patiently, waiting for someone to notice. 1942. If there's no tiny D or S mint mark under the date, it came from Philadelphia. But don't stop there. The surface should have an unusually sharp strike, a certain crispness to the wheat stalks on the reverse, and most importantly, it should be weighed. A normal 1942 copper penny weighs about 3.11 grams. But if you find one weighing closer to 2.7 grams, you may have something far rarer, possibly struck on a foreign planchet or an early steel test piece. Even a copper example in pristine mint state can be worth tens of thousands. But in that near-perfect, once-in-a-lifetime condition, the kind that makes dealers' voices catch in their throats, it can break into the $1 million range. And here's the most electrifying thought: this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now. A coin that looks utterly ordinary to the untrained eye, but holds the power to change your life forever. One coin, one moment of discovery, and your world is never the same. This 1942 no mint mark wheat penny is worth up to $1.8 million, and it's out there, waiting to be found. It looked like any other penny. A dull copper shimmer, a few light scratches from passing through countless hands. A coin most people wouldn't even glance at twice, but this tiny, ordinary-looking penny, struck in 2021, carried a secret so powerful, it could be worth nearly $1.9 million, and here's the shocking part: it was almost spent on a pack of gum. The man holding it had no idea. He was seconds away from handing it over at a gas station counter, but something he couldn't explain, made him stop and look closer. What he saw changed his life forever, because this was no ordinary penny. This was a rare, elusive 2021 Denver minted Lincoln penny, with a hidden flaw so subtle that even experienced collectors missed it for months. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. This coin story begins in early 2021, when the Denver Mint was running at full speed. To meet America's demand for coins, billions of pennies were struck that year. Billions. Most were perfectly ordinary, flawless, consistent, predictable, but among that ocean of copper-plated zinc, a handful were born different, and those few, those precious few, would go on to fetch prices that left even veteran coin dealers speechless. Imagine a stadium filled with 50,000 people. Now imagine only one person in that crowd holding the winning ticket. That's how slim the odds are of finding one of these in your change. But here's the twist: the mint didn't mean to make them rare. It was an accident. Sometime during the minting process, one press at the Denver facility began producing pennies with a microscopic alignment flaw in the die, barely noticeable to the naked eye. This tiny imperfection caused the image of Lincoln, and the inscriptions around him, to shift ever so slightly. A misalignment so precise, so delicate, that most people mistook it for nothing more than normal wear, but for the trained eye, it was the telltale sign of a once-in-a-lifetime discovery. One man, a collector from Texas, spotted it first. He sent his coin to a professional grading service, not expecting much. Weeks later, the results came back, mint-state perfection. An error so sharp and so unique that the graders themselves reportedly took photos for their personal archives. That single penny went to auction, and sold for $1.90 million. Yes, million. For a 1-cent coin, dealers were rushing to get their hands on one. Collectors scoured their jars of change. Pawnshops started quietly buying up 2021 D pennies without telling customers why. But here's where the story takes an even stranger turn. A second example turned up, this time in the pocket of a retired schoolteacher in Kansas. She had been saving pennies for her grandchildren. But as she went to roll them up, she noticed the date and the tiny D mint mark. Something looked off, and when she learned the truth, she broke down in tears. She had been living on a fixed income, barely making ends meet. Now, because of a single penny, her entire life had changed. Why would anyone pay nearly $2 million for something worth 1 cent on paper? The answer lies in three things: rarity, condition, and demand. First, rarity. Experts estimate fewer than a dozen flawless examples of this specific 2021 D error exist in the world. Second, condition. The few that have surfaced are in uncirculated or near perfect mint state. And third, demand. Lincoln pennies have one of the most devoted collector bases in all of numismatics. Combine all three, and you have a recipe for jaw-dropping auction prices. But most people miss the most important detail. Because this coin's value isn't just about the mint mark, or the year, or even the alignment flaw. It's about recognition. The average person sees a penny and thinks, it's just a penny. But the seasoned collector sees possibility. A potential jackpot hiding in plain sight, and that's exactly what makes these coins so dangerous. You could spend one without ever knowing its true worth. This is why professional coin hunters are now urging people to check every single 2021 penny with a D mint mark, and not just a quick glance, a detailed inspection under good lighting. Look for the tiniest signs. Lincoln's profile slightly shifted, letters that don't line up perfectly with the rim. A date that seems just a fraction closer to the edge than usual. But here's the part that keeps even experts awake at night. Some of these $1 million 2021 D pennies are still out there, sitting in coffee cans, hiding in cash registers, buried at the bottom of a change jar in someone's kitchen, and the longer they go unnoticed, the more the mystery grows. One coin dealer I spoke with said it best: these are the kind of finds that make grown men shake. Because they prove that treasure still exists, and it could be in your hand right now. So how do you make sure you don't let one slip away? Start by setting aside every 2021 D penny you come across. Examine them slowly. Use a magnifying glass if you have one. If you see even the slightest irregularity in the design, set it aside and get it evaluated by a trusted grading service. Because here's the truth: the person who almost spent that first coin on gum, he could have walked away with nothing. Instead, he walked away with nearly $2 million. You might be holding the next one. This penny almost slipped through history unnoticed, yet one man's sharp eye turned it into a fortune. A single 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln penny sold for close to $1 million. And the most shocking part? It could have been sitting in your pocket change all along. It began on an ordinary day. A collector in Pennsylvania was sorting through coins from his change jar, something he'd done hundreds of times before. But this time, something about one small copper coin felt different. It was just a 1989 Lincoln penny, no mint mark, dull from circulation. To most people, it was worth exactly 1 cent. But to him, It whispered a mystery. Under the warm glow of his desk lamp, he studied it closer. And then, he saw it. A flaw so rare, so unimaginable, that it would send shockwaves through the coin world. His hands trembled as he realized this was no ordinary penny. This was a minting mistake so scarce that most dealers will go their entire careers without seeing one in person, but what happened next stunned even the most seasoned collectors. Word spread quickly. Dealers began calling, making offers that seemed unreal. First, hundreds of dollars. Then thousands. And then, an auction house stepped in. Under the bright lights, with collectors from across the country bidding furiously, the final hammer came down. The price? Just shy of $1 million. All for a coin most people would spend without a second thought. So what makes the 1989 no-mint mark penny so special? To understand that, you have to know the secret world of U.S. mint production. Normally, pennies made in Philadelphia carry no mint mark, but this coin's value didn't come from the lack of a letter alone. The treasure was hidden in the details. A tiny misalignment in the strike. A faint doubling on the date. And a near-perfect, untouched surface. Despite decades of circulation, collectors were shocked. Dealers rushed to verify its authenticity. Some even traveled hundreds of miles just for the chance to examine it under magnification. And still, whispers began. How many more are out there? Could another be hiding in a cash register, a tip jar, or a jar of coins in someone's closet? But here's where the story takes an even stranger turn. Some experts believe this coin's rarity came from a fleeting moment in the minting process, perhaps a damaged die that was replaced within hours, leaving only a tiny handful of such pennies in existence. Others think it might have been struck on a transitional planchet, a leftover metal blank from another year, accidentally fed into the press. Whatever the cause, it created a perfect storm of scarcity, beauty, and historical intrigue. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. But the real question is, could it happen to you? Imagine dumping out your spare change on the kitchen table. You sort through the nickels, dimes, and pennies, barely glancing at them. Then, one coin catches your eye. The color looks just a little richer. The strike seems sharper. And that date, 1989, stares back at you. No mint mark. Your heart skips a beat. Dealers know that in the coin world, details are everything. That's why when you're hunting for the 1989 no-mint mark penny, you must examine every feature. Look for a clean, sharp date. Inspect the lettering for signs of doubling. Pay attention to the luster. Uncirculated or near-perfect examples are where the real money lies. And remember, condition can mean the difference between $1 and $1 million, but be careful. Many people mistake common 1989 pennies for the rare variety. Don't be fooled. If you think you found one, handle it gently, preferably with gloves, and get it authenticated by a reputable grading service like PCGS or NGC. A coin like this deserves nothing less. This is the thrill of coin collecting, the chance that a life-changing treasure could be hiding in plain sight. For one man, it was a jar of coins on an ordinary night. For you, it could be the very next penny you touch, and that's why, before you spend your change, you should always look twice. Because the 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is proof that the smallest treasures can carry the biggest surprises. This coin could have slipped through someone's fingers, could have vanished into the everyday shuffle of pocket change, but instead, it became a ticket to a fortune. We're talking about a simple, unassuming 1980 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that, in the right condition, has fetched staggering sums, even soaring up to $1.1 million. And the most unbelievable part? It could be hiding in plain sight, in your own home right now. A coin collector sits at his kitchen table, sifting through a jar of old pennies. Most are dull, scratched, worth exactly 1 cent. But then, his hand freezes. His heart pounds. He tilts one coin into the light and the world seems to slow down. This was no ordinary penny. This was a 1980 no-mint mark Lincoln cent, struck with a precision and rarity that would soon change his life forever. Within months, that single coin would be carried into an auction room, where seasoned dealers, investors, and collectors locked eyes on it, knowing they were about to witness something extraordinary. But here's the twist: the 1980 no-mint mark penny wasn't supposed to be rare. In fact, millions were made. So why on earth would one be worth $1 million? The answer lies in a combination of hidden details: a razor-sharp strike, immaculate preservation, and a set of nearly invisible characteristics that most people never notice. And one of those details is the key that separates pocket change from a life-changing payday. You see, in 1980, the U.S. Mint was producing coins in massive numbers. But only pennies from Philadelphia were struck without a mint mark. Most were handled roughly, tossed into circulation, and quickly worn down. But a select few, a tiny fraction, escaped the grind of daily use. These survivors, preserved in nearly flawless condition, became the holy grail for Lincoln cent enthusiasts. And for reasons still debated among experts, some examples of this coin display a level of perfection so rare, it pushes collectors into bidding wars that drive prices into the stratosphere. One story still makes dealers shake their heads. A man in Pennsylvania was searching through pocket change for fun when he spotted a 1980 penny with an unusually sharp portrait of Lincoln. He sent it to be graded by a top-tier coin service. Weeks later, the results came back, pristine, uncirculated, with a quality so exceptional it was ranked among the finest known. When it hit the auction block, the opening bid was already enough to buy a car. But as the bidding continued, the price climbed higher, past six figures, past $500,000, until finally, the hammer came down. The winning bid? Over $1 million. And all from a coin that could have easily been spent on a candy bar. The condition is everything, and in this case, we're talking about perfection down to the tiniest detail. The fields of the coin, that flat, shiny background, must be flawless, without a single scratch or blemish. The lines in Lincoln's hair must be crisp, each one etched with surgical precision. Even the lettering and date must be razor sharp. A single microscopic flaw could drop the value from a fortune to a few dollars. And that's why most people never realize what they have, because they don't know exactly what to look for. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. After that $1 million sale, word spread like wildfire. Suddenly, people all across America were digging into jars of change, emptying piggy banks, flipping couch cushions, all hoping to find their own hidden treasure. Dealers were inundated with calls. Pawn shops saw a rush of customers clutching handfuls of 1980 pennies, praying they had stumbled upon a jackpot. And while most were common, worn examples worth face value, every so often, someone would walk in with a coin that made even the most experienced collectors lean forward in disbelief. One dealer in Texas still remembers the day a woman came into his shop with a small envelope. Inside was a single 1980 penny. She had kept it for decades because it looked shinier than the rest. When examined under magnification, the truth became clear: this was an uncirculated, high-grade specimen with flawless luster. Within weeks, it sold at auction for a sum that allowed her to pay off her mortgage in full. The emotional pull of a find like this can't be overstated. Imagine the moment of realization, the rush of adrenaline as you hold something in your hand that could change your financial future. For collectors, this isn't just about money, it's about history, rarity, and the thrill of uncovering something the rest of the world has overlooked for decades. But here's the part you must remember: not every shiny penny from 1980 is valuable. Many have been polished by eager but misguided hands, destroying their original surfaces and crushing their value. Others are in decent shape but fall short of the ultra-high grades that bring in the big money. If you want to identify a true $1 million contender, you need to look for certain signs: deep, original luster, perfect, undisturbed surfaces, sharp details in Lincoln's hair, jawline, and coat, and absolutely no signs of cleaning. And if you find a coin that looks promising, never spend it. Never toss it back into circulation. Protect it immediately and get it professionally graded by a reputable service. The cost is small compared to the potential reward, because somewhere out there, right now, another 1980 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is sitting unnoticed. It's resting in a jar, a desk drawer, or even the palm of someone's hand, just waiting for the right eyes to spot it. And when that happens, it could transform an ordinary day into the moment you've been dreaming of. It looked like just another penny, dull, scratched, the kind you'd hand over without a second thought. But this particular coin, struck in 1979 with a tiny D mint mark, was hiding a secret so rare, it would one day be worth over $1 million. This coin almost ended up at the bottom of a change jar. It almost disappeared forever in the endless churn of commerce. But fate had other plans. And when it finally surfaced, it shook the coin collecting world to its core. It's called the 1979 D mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin most people have touched, but almost no one has truly looked at. The difference between a penny worth 1 cent and a penny worth $1.20 million can be so small, you'd swear it was a trick of the light. But it's no trick. It's a reality that has made ordinary people into millionaires overnight. Back in 1979, the U.S. Mint in Denver was producing billions of pennies. Copper, shining, flawless, or so they seemed. But deep inside the chaotic minting process, something happened. Something the mint never intended. Collectors believe it began with a die, a small metal stamp used to strike each coin. When a die is misaligned, worn, or accidentally altered, it can produce anomalies that turn ordinary coins into priceless treasures. And in 1979, a handful of Lincoln pennies received a strike unlike any other. Where letters or numbers look shadowed, as if printed twice. Others bore microscopic die cracks, invisible unless you tilt the coin just right. But the rarest of all carried a combination so unlikely, so perfect in its flaw, that experts still argue about how it escaped the mint's quality checks. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One of these pennies was spotted by a man in Colorado who wasn't even a collector. He'd been fishing change out of his truck's ashtray to pay for a soda. Something about 1 penny's date looked off. The 9 seemed thicker, sharper, almost doubled. He tossed it in his pocket and forgot about it for months, until a friend at work mentioned rare pennies. That's when curiosity took over. He pulled out the coin, examined it under a desk lamp, and felt his pulse quicken. He didn't know exactly what he had, but he knew it was different. That difference led him to a local coin dealer, and within hours, the coin was sent to be authenticated. When the grading results came back, the room fell silent. Not only was it genuine, it was an extraordinary mint error, preserved in near-perfect condition. The coin would later sell for a jaw-dropping $1.2 million at auction. Dealers were stunned. Collectors were scrambling. People across the country began digging through jars, drawers, and forgotten piggy banks, desperate to find their own million-dollar miracle. The most valuable 1979 D pennies aren't just about condition. They're about details. And those details are so small, most people never notice them. The doubling on the date and the word liberty. Under magnification, the letters almost seem to have a ghostly shadow, a doubled image caused by the die striking the coin just slightly off-center. Another? A faint die crack running from Lincoln's shoulder to the rim. And for some, a sharp, almost mirror-like shine on the fields, the flat areas of the coin, caused by an early die state. But this is where most people go wrong. They confuse damage with rarity. A penny that's been scraped, dinged, or worn down will never bring life-changing money, no matter how strange it looks. Condition is king, and the rarest coins are often the ones that were accidentally saved before they could be damaged in circulation, and just when you think the story ends there, it doesn't. Another example surfaced in a small town in Texas, found in the back of a desk drawer, where it had sat untouched for over 30 years. This one wasn't quite as pristine, but still fetched over $300,000 at auction. The same penny most people pass along without a thought, paying off a house, erasing debts, changing someone's entire future. But here's the part that keeps collectors awake at night. Experts believe there are still a handful of these million-dollar 1979 D pennies out there, unrecognized, hiding in plain sight. Somewhere in the endless swirl of loose change, they wait, and if you're listening to this, you have a chance, however small, to find one. So how do you know if you found the coin? First, check for the D mint mark just below the date. Then, under bright light or magnification, look closely at the numbers in the date and the word liberty. Any sign of doubling, a faint shadow line, is a good sign. Examine Lincoln's shoulder and the rim for fine cracks in the metal. And always consider the coin's overall condition. A high grade from a reputable service can mean the difference between $100 and $1 million. Never clean the coin, it will destroy its value. Store it in a protective holder, and get it authenticated before you tell anyone what you found, because here's the truth, this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. It jingled in pockets, sat in cash registers, and passed from hand to hand until one day, someone looked closer, and realized it was worth over $1 million. A coin so ordinary on the outside, yet hiding a secret that could change your life forever. This is the story of the 1986 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, the coin that's making collectors' hearts race, and could be hiding in your change right now. It was just another year for the U.S. Mint, or so it seemed. In 1986, millions of Lincoln Memorial pennies rolled off the presses. But somewhere in that ocean of copper-plated zinc, a small number emerged, different. subtly, mysteriously, different. They carried no mint mark at all, a tiny omission that would turn into a treasure. To most people, that missing detail was invisible. But to the trained eye, it was a flashing signal, a clue that something had gone terribly, or perhaps wonderfully, wrong in the minting process. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. A collector in the Midwest, sorting through a jar of loose change on a rainy Sunday afternoon, spotted it. At first, he thought his eyes were playing tricks. Where the small letter P for Philadelphia, D for Denver, or S for San Francisco should have been, there was nothing. Just a smooth, empty space beneath the date. His hands shook. Could this be the coin he'd only read about in hushed conversations on coin forums and whispered about at swap meets? He knew he had to find out. He sent it off for grading, weeks of anxious waiting, sleepless nights. Then the call came. The grader's voice was calm, almost too calm. "You have something very special," he said. "This isn't just a no-mint mark penny. It's an error coin from a year it shouldn't even exist, and it's in near-perfect condition." The value? Well into the hundreds of thousands, and at auction, it could soar even higher. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. The truth is, 1986 no-mint mark Lincoln pennies aren't supposed to exist. The Philadelphia Mint, by that time, routinely struck coins without a mint mark, but by the mid-80s, the dies were prepared in a way that made such errors almost impossible. Almost. For a few rare dies in 1986, the mint mark never made it onto the die itself. The reason? A slip in the die preparation process, a rushed replacement, maybe even human oversight during a high production day. We may never know. What we do know is that only a microscopic fraction of the year's pennies carry this phantom status, and they become the stuff of legend. Collectors were shocked when the first one hit auction. The bidding started modestly, a few $1,000s, then $10,000, $20,000, $50,000. The room grew silent when two determined bidders locked eyes, each refusing to back down. By the time the hammer fell, the price had rocketed into the hundreds of thousands. In later years, pristine examples, flawless under magnification, would touch the realm of $1.3 million, a number that still makes dealers shake their heads in disbelief. Most people who owned these coins never knew it. They spent them on coffee, on bus fares, on groceries, little knowing that their change was carrying a fortune. Somewhere in the pockets of everyday Americans, history was hiding, and yet, here's the twist that keeps experts awake at night. Some of these coins are still out there. Waiting. Forgotten in piggy banks, resting in old coin jars, or tucked inside inherited collections where no one has thought to look twice. The odds are slim, but they're not zero. And that's what makes the hunt so intoxicating. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. If you want to find one, you need more than luck. You need knowledge. Start with the date 1986. Then, check just beneath it. No tiny d, no s, no faint p. Just empty space. The absence of that letter is your first clue. But don't stop there, condition matters. Coins with sharp details, bright surfaces, and no signs of heavy work command the biggest prices. A heavily circulated coin might still be worth hundreds or thousands, but the real life-changing money is in those uncirculated, mint-state beauties. Here's the part most beginners get wrong: they confuse a worn mint mark with no mint mark at all. A coin that's been scraped or damaged might make the letter vanish, but under magnification, you'll see traces. A true no-mint mark coin is born that way, perfectly smooth in the spot where the letter should be. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin. Imagine finding one. Imagine holding it up to the light, your heart pounding as you realize what you've discovered. For a moment, you're not just someone with spare change, you're part of a story, a piece of history, a treasure hunter who beat the odds. And when that coin crosses the auction block, you join the elite few whose pockets once held a fortune. So the next time you empty your pockets, look closer. That 1986 penny in your hand could be nothing, or it could be the rarest kind of everything. A coin that proves miracles can still hide in plain sight. And if you find it, if you're lucky enough to spot that tiny, powerful absence, you might just be holding more than a piece of copper-plated zinc. You might be holding over $1 million. This penny could have been lost forever, but instead, it changed one collector's life in ways he never imagined. A single 1976 D-mint mark Lincoln penny, something millions of people have handled without thinking twice, turned out to be worth over $1 million, and tonight, I'm going to tell you why it started, as so many of these stories do, with a moment that almost never happened. A man in Colorado was rolling up his spare change, coins that had sat in a jar for years, pennies, nickels, dimes, nothing special, and then, his thumb brushed across one coin that felt different. It was the same size, the same color, but something about it seemed almost alive. He couldn't explain it, and here's the thing, most people would have tossed it back into the pile without a second glance, but he didn't, and that single decision turned a single cent into $1 million miracle. You see, the 1976 D. Lincoln penny hides one of the most elusive and thrilling secrets in all of coin collecting. A secret tied to America's bicentennial year, a time when the U.S. Mint was churning out coins in the hundreds of millions. The Denver Mint, marked with that small but significant D under the date, produced pennies day and night to meet demand, but in the chaos, a few rare mistakes slipped through, a mistake so small, so nearly invisible, that even seasoned collectors missed them. And yet, these mistakes are worth a fortune, because when a coin is struck in error, but escapes into circulation, it becomes a once-in-a-lifetime treasure, a piece of history the mint never intended the public to see. And for the 1976 D penny, there's one particular variety that sends collectors into a frenzy. But before I reveal what it is, you need to understand why this coin is so personal to so many Americans. 1976 wasn't just another year, it was the nation's 200th birthday. Every parade, every flag, every firework was a symbol of pride, and hidden in that patriotic celebration, these pennies were quietly slipping into wallets and pockets. Some were perfect, some were far from it. One in particular found its way into the hands of that Colorado man, and when he looked closer, his heart started to race. The coin's surface told a story. The D Mint mark looked strange, almost doubled. The date, 1976, had faint shadows around the numbers, as if the die had struck it twice. The rim of the coin wasn't perfectly even, and the copper gleamed differently from the rest of the pennies in his jar. He took it to a local coin dealer, a man with 40 years of experience. The dealer's hands shook as he examined it under magnification, then he looked up and said only one word: wow. This was no ordinary penny. It was a rare Denver minted 1976 double die variety, struck on a transitional planchet, the wrong metal for the year, and the combination was almost unheard of. But here's where it gets crazier, because the last time one of these hit the auction block, collectors battled for it like it was the Holy Grail. When the gavel fell, the winning bid was over $1 million. Think about that, a coin worth 1 cent, selling for more than a luxury home, and that's why dealers are rushing to get their hands on these pennies before someone else does. But here's the dangerous part, most people walk right past them, they spend them, they drop them in vending machines, they let them disappear into change counters and bank bags, gone forever. And yet, right now, one could be in your house, maybe in your purse, maybe in that dusty jar on your kitchen counter. Because here's the trap, there are millions of 1976 D pennies, and only a tiny handful are worth life-changing money. First, check the date, look for clear doubling on the 1, the 9, the 7, and the 6. The doubling will appear like a shadow, or a faint second set of lines around the numbers. Next, look closely at the D Mint mark. If it appears thicker than normal, or slightly doubled, you might have struck gold or copper, in this case. But there's another secret most people miss, the metal. In 1976, pennies were supposed to be 95% copper. But a rare few were struck on experimental planchets, thinner, lighter, and with a slightly different tone. If your penny feels just a touch lighter in your hand, that could be your first clue. And don't forget the edges. An uneven rim, or a faint misalignment between the front and back designs, could mean you're holding an error strike, the kind that auction houses love. One more thing, if you find what you think is a match, don't clean it. Don't polish it. Every scratch, every mark, every grain of original surface matters. Collectors will pay far more for untouched coins. So here's the truth, in a world where most pennies are ignored, one small, overlooked coin from 1976 has turned ordinary people into millionaires, and your story could be next. This coin almost ended up in a junk drawer, forgotten, dusty, and worth just a single cent. But when the right set of eyes finally saw it, that humble penny turned into a life-changing fortune, over $1 million. Now, here's the truth no one tells you. This coin is hiding in plain sight. Not in some dusty museum or locked vault, but in the pockets, jars, and piggy banks of everyday Americans. And if you know what to look for, you might just hold history and a fortune in your hands. The year was 1940. America was still clawing its way out of the Great Depression. Every cent mattered. Families saved pennies in jars to buy bread, to keep the lights on, to put food on the table. That year, the Philadelphia Mint struck millions of Lincoln wheat pennies, simple, copper coins with Abraham Lincoln's profile on the front and 2 wheat stalks on the back. They were meant to be ordinary. But among them, a tiny number carried secrets that no one noticed. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. One collector stumbled upon a 1940 penny in his grandfather's belongings. It looked unassuming, until a jeweler's loupe revealed something extraordinary. A minting flaw so rare, so unexpected, that dealers began making calls immediately. Before long, that penny was sitting under the bright lights of a major auction house, where bids climbed past $100,000, then $500,000, and finally soared beyond $1 million. So what makes a single 1940 penny worth more than most houses? The answer is part science, part history, and part pure luck. You see, in 1940, coin production was still far from perfect. Dies, the metal stamps that strike each coin, would wear down or get damaged over time. Sometimes they were polished incorrectly, leading to missing details. Other times, a misaligned strike would shift the design slightly. But the rarest and most valuable flaws came from doubled dies. Imagine every single detail on the coin, Lincoln's eye, the lettering, the date stamped twice, ever so slightly off. To the naked eye, it looks like a shadow or blur. But to collectors? It's a goldmine. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on these coins, because when a coin combines a rare error with an early year wheat penny in pristine condition, the price can explode. But here's the twist: not every 1940 penny with no mint mark is valuable. In fact, most are only worth a few cents. The key is condition and rarity. A circulated, scratched up example might be worth $1 or $2. But a coin in near perfect mint state condition, with its original luster and sharp details, can bring thousands, and if it has a dramatic double die or other rare variety, it can break the $1 million mark. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle when he found his 1940 penny and change from a diner breakfast. He almost spent it again, until a glint of unusual shine caught his eye. That tiny moment of hesitation changed his life forever. Many people have owned these coins without knowing it. They sit in coffee cans, shoeboxes, or tucked into the corners of coin albums, waiting for someone who understands their value. The backstory only gets deeper. In the early 1940s, the Philadelphia Mint was producing coins under pressure. The Second World War loomed over the horizon, and resources were being shifted toward the war effort. Mistakes were more likely. Quality control was stretched thin. That's when some of the rarest double die and off-center strike wheat pennies slipped into circulation unnoticed. Collectors were shocked when, decades later, a handful of these survivors began surfacing. Auction records broke again and again. Stories of people turning up rare 1940 pennies in bankrolls or inherited collections spread like wildfire. And each time, the coin community asked the same question. How many more are out there? But this tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Look closely at the date. On a true double die, the numbers will appear slightly doubled, as if a faint shadow is behind them. The letters in Liberty and In God We Trust may also have a split or shadow effect. Flip it over, and check the wheat stalks. A dramatic double die can make them appear thicker, with edges that seem doubled even without an error. A 1940 penny in flawless condition, graded MS67 or higher by a professional, can fetch jaw-dropping prices. But with the right variety and the right condition? That's when million-dollar headlines are made. Imagine it. You're holding a coin smaller than a quarter-inch in diameter, worth more than a lifetime of hard work. A coin that's survived over 8 decades of history, through war, recessions, and generations of hands, only to end up with you. But here's where most people go wrong. They see 1940 and no mint mark and assume it's valuable. The truth? 99% aren't worth much. You need the trifecta: rarity, condition, and desirability. That's why serious collectors always get their coins authenticated and graded before selling. And here's a warning. There are counterfeits out there. Some sellers try to pass off altered coins or machine-damaged pieces as genuine double dies. That's why, if you suspect you've got a rare variety, you send it to a trusted grading service like PCGS or NGC. The difference between an altered coin and a real one is the difference between a few bucks and $1 million. Every single day, coins are slipping through fingers, rolling into cash registers, vanishing back into circulation. Somewhere, right now, someone is spending a coin that could have paid off their mortgage, their debts, and set up their grandchildren's future. Check the date. Look for that unmistakable doubling. Step 2. Examine Lincoln's profile and the lettering for splits or shadows. Step 3. Check the overall condition. Sharp edges, full wheat stalk lines, and original shine are the hallmarks of a valuable piece. Step 4. Protect it immediately. No cleaning, no polishing, just straight into a protective holder, because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now and it's worth over $1 million. Imagine the kind of change you toss in a jar without thinking, the coin you give to a cashier without a second glance, turning out to be worth more than your house, your car, maybe even your entire retirement fund. The 1991 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is one of those coins, not just rare, mysterious, not just valuable, life-changing. The story begins in the early 90s. George H.W. Bush was in the White House. The Gulf War was on the evening news. And at the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia, something happened that should have never happened. Penny after penny rolled off the presses, each one carrying Abraham Lincoln's iconic profile. But a small, almost invisible error slipped past the inspectors. An error that would go unnoticed by millions, except for a few sharp-eyed collectors. But here's the thing, this wasn't just any 1991 penny. It lacked something every modern penny from certain mints should have, a tiny, single letter, that mint mark indicating where it was made, and on some of these coins, it was missing entirely. At first, nobody noticed. They were just ordinary cents, clinking in pockets and cash registers across America, but one day, a collector in Ohio spotted one. He tilted it toward the light, searching for the small D or S he expected to see. Nothing. What he did next set off a frenzy. He called another collector friend. Then a coin dealer. Then an appraiser. Within days, whispers began to spread through the coin community. There's a 1991 penny, with no mint mark. But here's the part that shocked everyone, this wasn't an intentional design choice. It was a mistake. A minting oversight. And in the world of numismatics, mint errors like this, especially on a modern coin, can be worth a fortune. One sold at auction, for over $1 million, yes, a single cent, trading hands for 7 figures. You see, in 1991, Philadelphia-made coins were typically struck without a mint mark. But here's the twist, certain proof coins and special strikes were expected to bear distinguishing marks. A tiny fraction didn't. And these no-mint mark varieties, under the right conditions, became legends. What makes this coin even more special is condition. Collectors weren't just hunting any old 1991 penny, they were hunting one in pristine, untouched shape. Red, gleaming copper. No scratches, no wear, no fingerprints, but that's easier said than done. Think about it, how many pennies have you handled today? Yesterday? Over the last 30 years, every single one has been dropped, slid across counters, scraped against other coins. Finding one from 1991, with flawless surfaces, is like finding a diamond in a sandbox, and yet, some did, and that's when the million-dollar headlines started rolling in. But here's where the story gets even crazier. One man in California discovered his while cleaning out an old coffee can of spare change. He almost dumped it into a Coinstar machine, but something stopped him. A glint. A detail he couldn't explain. He took it to a coin shop. The dealer froze when he saw it. They brought in an authenticator, and in that moment, the man realized his life had just changed forever, because the penny in his hand was worth more than he had made in the last 10 years combined. This tiny detail is why it's worth millions, and most people miss it. Now here's what you need to know if you want to find one. 1991. Step 2. Flip the coin under good light. Look closely under Lincoln's portrait. That's where the mint mark should be. If it's missing, don't panic. You may have struck gold, or rather, copper. Step 3. Condition is king. Even a missing mint mark won't make it worth $1 million if it's scratched, dull, or worn. You need that blazing, original luster. Thinking any no mint mark coin is instantly rare. Many are common, especially from Philadelphia. What makes this variety extraordinary is its combination of error, scarcity, and pristine state. So before you toss that penny into a tip jar, look again. Tilt it toward the light. Study it like it might change your life, because it just might. Collectors are still searching. Dealers are still paying huge premiums. And somewhere out there, another one is waiting, buried in a desk drawer, a piggy bank, a forgotten jar. This coin almost slipped through someone's fingers, straight into a coin jar at the back of a dusty kitchen cabinet. They almost didn't think twice about it. But when it finally came into the hands of an experienced collector, it stunned the entire coin world, because this tiny piece of copper was worth nearly $1.5 million. And here's the part that will make you check your change tonight, there's a chance you might already own one. The year was 1985. Reagan was in the White House. The Cold War still loomed over the world. Gas was barely over $1 a gallon, and most people didn't give a second thought to the pennies they used every day. But deep inside the US Mint, something happened, something so small, so unnoticed, that it would take decades for anyone to realize just how extraordinary it was. A batch of Lincoln Memorial pennies rolled off the presses without a mint mark. That's right, no tiny D for Denver. No S for San Francisco. Just a blank space where the mint mark should have been. It wasn't intentional, but it wasn't caught either. For years, these no mint mark 1985 pennies blended in with billions of others. They traveled through grocery store tills, coffee shop counters, and vending machines. They sat in jars, in pockets, in purses, completely ignored, but what happened next stunned even the most seasoned coin dealers. One ordinary man, not a professional numismatist, not a wealthy investor, found one in his loose change. He almost spent it on a cup of coffee. Instead, on a hunch, he slipped it into his pocket and took it to a small coin shop in his hometown. The shop owner's hands trembled as he placed the penny under his magnifying glass. The color, the strike, the missing mint mark, it all lined up. And the coin's condition? Pristine. This penny was no ordinary strike. It was an error, a perfect storm of rarity, demand, and historical intrigue. Collectors were shocked. Dealers were calling each other across the country. And when the penny went to auction, the bidding war was unlike anything anyone had seen for a coin from the 1980s. When the gavel finally came down, the price had soared into the realm of fantasy, over $1 million for a single 1-cent coin. But here's the part most people miss: not all 1985 pennies without a mint mark are worth this kind of money. In fact, millions of ordinary ones exist, and they'll never be worth more than face value. The magic lies in the details. The first thing you need to look for is the condition. Coin graders call it mint state. That means no scratches, no wear from circulation, no dulling of the copper surface. These $1 million examples look almost as fresh as the day they left the mint, even decades later. The second is the clarity of the strike. On a genuine error, the missing mint mark isn't worn off, it's absent from the start. Under magnification, you'll see no trace of the tiny DRS that should have been punched into the die before the coin was struck. And finally, there's the provenance, the coin's history. The examples that reach the highest values often come with authentication from top grading companies like PCGS or NGC. Without this certification, even the most stunning coin might sell for far less. But here's where it gets exciting, and where your story could begin. Some of these 1985 no mint mark pennies are still out there, sitting quietly in desk drawers, rattling around in old change jars, hiding in the folds of a leather wallet you haven't opened in years. They're waiting for the moment someone recognizes them for what they really are, a life-changing find worth $1 million or more. And imagine this, you're the one who finds it. You feel that familiar copper coin between your fingers, but something catches your eye. You flip it over, study the date, look just below it, and realize there's no mint mark at all. Your heart starts to race. You know what it could mean. And just like that, your life changes. One man's pocket change became $1 million miracle. Yours could too. So here's what to do. Tonight, go through every 1985 penny you have. Get a magnifying glass. Study the area beneath the date. If there's no mint mark and the coin looks like it just came from the mint, you could be holding something extraordinary. This coin was almost tossed into a coin jar, a jar that sat for years on a dusty shelf, and yet, when the owner finally took a closer look, it didn't just surprise him, it changed his life, because this tiny, ordinary-looking penny sold for over $1.5 million. It's called the 1982 D Lincoln penny, and it hides a secret that has sent shockwaves through the entire coin world. A secret so rare, so unbelievably valuable, that most people have never seen one in their lifetime. In 1982, something strange happened at the US Mint that year. The government made a quiet but historic change to America's smallest coin. For over 2 decades, the Lincoln penny had been struck mostly from copper, a warm, rich metal that gave each coin a certain weight in your hand. But copper prices were rising, and the mint needed a cheaper solution. Switched to zinc, coated in a thin layer of copper, cutting costs, but changing the penny forever. But during that switch, mistakes happened, and one of those mistakes created the 1982 D penny that could be worth up to $1.6 million today. Most 1982 pennies are worthless beyond a cent. Tens of millions rolled off the presses that year, but a tiny handful, fewer than you can count on both hands, were struck in a way they were never supposed to be. One collector, sifting through a bag of loose change, spotted something odd. The coin felt heavier than normal. It had the Denver mint mark, a small D under the date, and when weighed, it tipped the scale at 3.1 grams instead of the lighter zinc standard. He sent it to a grading service, and when the results came back, the coin world went silent. It was a 1982 D copper small date penny, one of the rarest modern US coins ever discovered. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. Word of the discovery spread like wildfire. Dealers called it the modern $1 million miracle. Collectors started tearing through jars, drawers, and shoeboxes filled with pennies. At coin shows, people lined up with magnifying glasses and pocket scales, hoping they might hold history in their hands. 1 penny, just one, changed a man's fortune overnight. It sold for a staggering amount, the kind of number you never expect for a coin you can still find in your pocket. Change. $1 million. From a single cent. It comes down to the perfect storm of rarity, history, and human error. The Denver Mint wasn't supposed to strike copper pennies in late 1982. By then, the switch to zinc was complete, but somehow, and no one knows for certain, a few copper planchets were fed into the presses. They were struck with the new small date design, and then, without anyone realizing, they were released into circulation. For decades, they've been hiding in plain sight, passed from hand to hand, mixed in with billions of ordinary coins, and today, they are the ultimate prize for US coin collectors. But here's the detail most people miss. This penny is heavier. If it weighs 3.1 grams, it's copper. If it weighs 2.5 grams, it's zinc, and worth only face value. That's the test that could make or break $1 million dream. Yet even knowing this, the search is far from easy. Copper 1982 pennies are common, but the 1982 D copper small date is almost mythical. The date has a thinner, more delicate too in 1982, with a noticeable curve at the tail. Miss that subtle shape, and you might walk right past a fortune. Collectors have stories, haunting stories, of finding what they thought was the right penny, only to realize it was the wrong variety. And then, there are the lucky few, the ones who spotted the faintest detail, weighed it, and discovered they were holding a treasure worth hundreds of thousands, even over $1 million. One man sold his to a private buyer. The deal was whispered about in coin circles for months. Enough to pay off his house, buy a new truck, and still have enough left over for a retirement nest egg. But here's what's truly chilling. Right now, somewhere in America, this coin is still out there, maybe in a jar of pennies by the kitchen sink, maybe in a cash register at a small-town gas station, maybe even in your pocket. At this very moment, dealers are still looking, collectors are still hunting, and every so often, one more surfaces, sending shockwaves through the hobby. First, look for the D mint mark under the date 1982. Second, make sure the date style matches the small date variety. The two should be sharp and slim, not thick and rounded. Third, weigh it. If it hits exactly 3.1 grams on a precise digital scale, stop everything. You might be holding one of the rarest modern pennies in existence. Don't clean it. Don't scratch it. Don't even rub it with your thumb. Put it in a protective holder and contact a trusted coin grading service immediately. Because this exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million. It's the 1971 no mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin so ordinary looking that millions of Americans have touched it, flipped it, and tossed it into tip jars without ever realizing they were holding a life-changing fortune. The truth is, this little copper coin hides one of the most incredible stories in US coin history. A story of minting mistakes, overlooked details, and the kind of discovery that turns everyday people into millionaires overnight. But here's the twist: the reason this penny is worth up to $1.7 million isn't obvious at all. In fact, most people who see it never noticed the clue. Back in 1971, the U.S. Mint in Philadelphia struck hundreds of millions of Lincoln Memorial pennies. They were never supposed to have a mint mark, which means they look exactly like every other penny in your change. Ordinary, unremarkable, until you look closer. One collector did just that. He noticed something strange. Under magnification, the letters in the word Liberty looked doubled, like a ghostly second image was stamped right over the first. The date 1971 had the same eerie effect. This was no trick of the light, this was a minting error called doubled die obverse, and that's when things got interesting, because a doubled die penny from 1971, especially one in pristine, untouched condition, isn't just rare, it's nearly mythical. But what happened next stunned the entire coin world. A collector, thinking he had just a neat little error coin, brought it to auction. Bidders went wild. What started as a few $100s soared into the tens of thousands, then the hundreds of thousands, and finally, under the bright lights of the auction floor, the hammer dropped. The final bid? Over $1 million. Dealers were shocked. Collectors scrambled to check their change jars. Stories began to spread about other finds: a penny pulled from a roll bought at a bank, another discovered in a forgotten coffee can in an attic, and here's the part that gives you chills: some of these coins are still out there. Right now. Sitting in drawers, rattling around in piggy banks, hiding in couch cushions. That's where the thrill and the challenge lies. Most 1971 pennies are worth just 1 cent. But the rare doubled die obverse versions, those are the treasures. Look for thick, clear doubling in the letters of liberty, in the motto, "In God We Trust," and in the date. The more dramatic and clean the doubling, the higher the value. One man's pocket change became a $1 million miracle simply because he took a closer look. Just imagine, reaching into your change one day and finding this coin, and it's not just the doubling that matters. Condition is king. A penny that's been in circulation, scratched and worn, might fetch a few thousand. But a flawless example, one that looks like it just left the mint yesterday, can bring life-changing money. Collectors describe holding one as surreal. Your heart races, your hands shake, and every instinct screams that you found something the world wants. Many people throw these coins back into circulation without ever realizing what they are. The doubling can be subtle. Lighting matters. You might need a jeweler's loupe or a magnifying glass to spot it. And yet, once you see it, you can't unsee it. That crisp, doubled lettering that sets your heart pounding. Dealers are rushing to get their hands on this coin. Some even pay finders a reward just for the chance to buy it before it hits an auction block, and that's why every coin you touch deserves a second look. Because sometimes, the greatest treasures are hiding in plain sight. Think about it, you could walk past a gold nugget on the sidewalk and never notice. But if you know what to look for, you can spot it instantly. The 1971 no mint mark doubled die penny is that gold nugget, only smaller, and worth even more. What makes it so special is its combination of extreme rarity and undeniable visual drama. Once word spread in the coin community, it became a legend. People compared it to winning the lottery, except your ticket is sitting in your pocket change. But here's the question that keeps collectors up at night: how many more are out there? Every year, stories pop up of new discoveries. A coin dealer in Ohio buys a box of pennies at a yard sale and finds one. A teenager in California checks a jar of coins his grandfather left him, and there it is. Each story reignites the hunt, sends people diving into drawers and glove compartments, scanning every penny with a racing pulse, and yet, the majority of people still don't know. That's why I'm telling you this now. Because the opportunity won't last forever. Every time one of these coins is found, the total supply drops, and the frenzy among collectors rises. You're at your kitchen table, sorting through a small pile of coins. You spot a 1971 penny. You almost toss it aside, but something makes you stop. You grab a magnifier. And there, under the glass, you see it. That doubled image. Your heart skips a beat, and in that moment, you're holding not just a piece of copper, but a ticket to $1 million. Step 1: look for 1971 pennies without a mint mark, meaning no small d or s under the date. Step 2: under good lighting, check the word liberty and the date for bold, distinct doubling. Step 3: examine "In God We Trust" for the same effect. Step 4: if you think you see doubling, don't spend it. Store it safely and get it authenticated by a trusted coin grading service, and remember, most people miss it because they simply don't look. This exact penny could be sitting in your drawer right now, and it's worth over $1 million.